Hi there, I'm Linda and this is Huttons Valley Permaculture. In today's video I wanted to share with you a little bit about my composting system, how I go about building and managing a compost pile, what I do to gather the resources and what sort of ratios that I use to make my compost, and of course what I do with it at the end. So what is compost? Well, it actually serves a number of purposes. It allows us to reduce, reuse and recycle our organic waste from the kitchen, garden and elsewhere, allowing us to reduce landfill, and adds value to this waste through nutrient cycling. Compost is a fertiliser as it contains a wide range of nutrients. It is also a soil conditioner as it improves soil structure and the ability of soil to hold water and recover from compaction. A really important role of compost is as a biological inoculant, which means it adds valuable microorganisms to the areas where it is used. Now, I've built my row of compost bays out of recycled materials. A lot of it is pallets that I found in town, but I've also got materials like recycled dog kennels and things like that. Just anything that I could pull together to build the structure. I've positioned my compost bays here because it's right next to my front yard veggie garden. It's best to build the compost directly on bare ground, as this allows soil organisms to move in and out of the pile as temperatures allow. You can build the compost just in a straight pile, but it would need to be about 1.5 meters tall in order to generate enough heat to kill off any seeds that may be in the added ingredients. There are a number of different ways to make compost, and I've tried the 18-day fast compost method in the past, which required a lot of turning. However, these days I find it easier to build my pile, turn once or twice, then leave it. It still heats up well, but decomposition takes longer than the faster method, but that's okay. If I have a number of piles always on the go, down the track I'll always have some compost that is ready to use. To make a compost pile that heats up, you need to have enough ingredients to make a minimum size of 1 meter cubed. Smaller than that and the heat is lost fairly quickly and decomposition slows. A variety of ingredients is important as it improves the quality of the finished product. In suburbia, in addition to kitchen scraps and garden refuse, I used to gather fallen leaves from the nature strips of nearby streets. I'd dumpster dive for produce at the supermarket and veggie shop, and I knew where to go to buy roadside manure bags. I would trim my trees at compost making time and use this as another ingredient in the mix. A carbon-nitrogen ratio of 25:1 is needed for good decomposition, and it's pretty easy to achieve. If you focus on having 1/3 of your pile as brown materials, like shredded branches, fallen leaves, 1/3 as manure, and 1/3 as green materials such as grass clippings, weeds, veggie garden refuse, etc., you can't go wrong. If you can't source manures, you would really need to up your green materials. I start with manure from my paddocks. Fresh manures are higher in nitrogen than older manures, so are great for the pile. Older manures are best chopped up if they have dried out a bit. Cow manure is particularly good for getting the compost started as it contains high levels of bacteria from the cow's gut. Another great source of mulch, if you have them, are deciduous trees. Now, I don't have big ones on my property, but my neighbour generously shares all these autumn leaves with me each season so I can add it to my compost. Dry leaves are a great carbon source. They have a carbon-nitrogen ratio of about 150:1, so they are an example of a brown material that you could use for 1/3 of your pile. When I'm gathering, I always take just what I need to make sure I leave enough in place for tree and soil health. Animal bedding is another great ingredient to use in your compost. For my duck and chicken bedding, I use high carbon materials including sugarcane mulch, shredded branches and leaves, and sometimes old hay. Rather than put these ingredients straight into the compost, I'll put them first through my animal systems, then I add them with the added manure to my compost pile. Another ingredient I like to use is shredded fresh leaves and branches, which can be considered as a green ingredient. If the leaves are older and brown, then they would have less nitrogen, and I would then prefer to cycle this through my animal systems before adding to the compost. Green materials also include old plants from the veggie garden, grass clippings and weeds. I also throw in dead animals or remains. In addition to dried leaves, brown materials would include sawdust or fine wood chips, which are very high in carbon. I'm just building a compost at the moment. There's some old pumpkins in there that the mice were eating, so I'm going to get rid of those. That's some leaf litter that I've picked up from the neighbours, and I've already got some manure and garden clippings in here. So now I'm just going to add what we've cleared out of the chicken coop. It's important for the ingredients to be moist, so I water them as I go, making sure not to saturate the pile. Okay, so now I've got the garden waste and the leaf litter on top. I'll go and get another wheelbarrow full of the chicken bedding and then add that on, and then I'll probably water it down again. Got my last layer of the chicken bedding on and nicely watered. Now I'm just going to add some leaves to that. I use a piece of cardboard on top. I used to use a plastic tarp but found they disintegrate. The cardboard keeps the leaves and moisture in and is a lot better. Well, that temperature's nice and hot now, so I'm happy to leave that compost. You could keep turning it every 2 days and that would make the decomposition go a lot faster. I'm happy just to let it go. I'm going to check it in a few months' time and see how it goes, but it might take, quite a few more months than that before it's ready to use. Okay, now that compost is all done, let me take you up to the hay shed compost, which isn't heating up and I need to fix it. Now, I built this compost the other day out of leaf litter that I'd picked up from the neighbours. It did have a little bit of wood chip in there as well. And manure that I've collected from the pasture, but it's really not getting hot. So I'm going to clear out the compost bin, remove the ingredients and fix it up. Now I've got to near the bottom, so I'm just going to give this a stir and then start adding my new ingredients in. I'm going to add some more green material and give it a turn. I've got some chicken bedding and some shredded leaves from a fallen tree that I had. So I'm going to add that in. Hopefully it will get hot once I've added all this extra in. Now, anything that was once alive or a byproduct of anything once alive can be added to the compost. My compost pile is really heated up, so I'm putting in some animal remains rather than burying it. I've covered it over well, and I don't normally put a pallet on to compact it, but I just want to make sure the foxes stay out of there. Having a look now, the pile is nice and active, and the foxes haven't got to it because I've got that pallet on top. It's all complete, so I'm happy to leave this one now for sort of 8 to 12 months, maybe until I need it again for next year. And then I'm just going to use any of this compost just as a garden amendment or as a mulch, and when I perhaps plant the trees up around near the hay shed and redo the the windbreak that I'm planting up here. This compost is quite aged and it's perfect to use in a potting mix. You can sift it to make it finer depending on what you want to use it for, such as in a seed raising mix. Now this compost here is not quite as aged. I would put this straight onto a garden bed like in my veggie patch to increase the organic matter each year before I plant. I also use compost when I'm planting out trees, and I use the fine one to add to potted plants to give them a bit of a boost. If my compost bays are filling up, I'll just bag the compost and store that until I need it. So that's how I've made 2 of my composts. I hope you found something interesting in what I've shared with you today. Please let me know down in the comments if you have. Anyway, thanks again for joining me, and bye for now.